Hi everyone, welcome. This week we continue with cognitive distortions, and today I'm going to talk with you about overgeneralization. So these terms, as we discussed, have been created by BECK, who is a psychiatrist, and he laid the groundwork for the study of these distortions. And his student, David Burns, continued the research on the distortions. Overgeneralization takes one instance or example and generalizes it into an overall pattern while making a broad assumption about something from limited experience. Burns describes overgeneralization as the process of arbitrarily deciding that one thing that happened to us once will occur over and over again. Overgeneralization can lead to overly negative thoughts about ourselves and our environment based on only one or two experiences. And this is ineffective largely because it's usually inaccurate and it can be very limiting. So another common cognitive distortion that is connected to overgeneralizing is called labeling or mislabeling. And this is an extreme form of overgeneralization. It occurs by negatively labeling and using inaccurate or exaggerated language to describe yourself or others based on your one experience and blaming others for all your problems instead of describing a mistake in your behavior. So some examples of overgeneralization can sound like this. You lose your job, so you feel that you're unemployable. You failed an exam, so you feel that you're idiotic. You go out on a date and were not asked for a second date, so you'll never be asked again. If we were to use the distorted thinking and overgeneralization for the dating example, then we would conclude that we'll never find a romantic partner because we were never asked on a second date. And we begin to believe with overgeneralizing distorted thoughts that we'll never be asked out on a second date. So if we really believe this, it can feel discouraging and would be hard to make any effort towards succeeding your aim at romance. You might stop chatting casually with people you don't know, or delete your dating app profile, and even turn down future dates. So how do we stop overgeneralizing? Well, one of the most beneficial methods, and one that I've been mentioning all along, is speaking with a counselor to begin the process of understanding your own cognitive distortions when situations arise. Though, some tips to prevent overgeneralizing include examining your thoughts, which is a common pattern in these cognitive distortions and an element that we've been discussing over the past few weeks. Usually when we encounter setbacks, painful emotions go along with them. The stronger the emotion, the more probable it is to influence our thinking and cause us falling into believing a distortion. Fortunately, all it takes to turn this pattern around is to start examining our thinking. Because when we do this, we come to a more balanced, rational perspective. And this process is called cognitive restructuring. So one of the most effective ways is to ask yourself a sequence of questions to help you think through the thought. So these 6 exploratory questions that we're going to talk about may be helpful the next time you think you're overgeneralizing. The best way to use these questions is to first identify the situations where we usually engage in this sort of distortion. Don't feel you have to be entirely persuaded for it to work. Just the act of taking on a new way of thinking can result in our emotions regulating and helping to develop healthier thinking habits. So let's go through these 6 steps. So the first step is ask yourself, what are the costs and benefits of this prediction? In other words, is it worth being so attached to this way of thinking? If this thought is costing you more than you are gaining, develop more effective ways of reacting to the situation by going through the next few steps. Step 2, determine what is the evidence for this prediction. Are you basing your conclusion on a lot of relevant data or just one or two elements? is there significant evidence against this thought? Would the evidence you're considering hold up in court, or is it unreliable? So step 3, based on the current facts, do you think everyone would draw the same conclusion? If not, consider why not, and whether other conclusions might be more effective in you coping or in achieving your desired outcome. So step 4, choose a friend. If this friend came to you and told you the same thing was happening to them, what would you say to them? Is it different than what you're telling yourself right now? Consider why you might be giving your friend different advice than you're giving yourself. Would you tell your friend what you're telling yourself? And if not, why not? Step 5, do you think you're relying on the actual evidence? Or is it possible you're letting your feelings guide your thinking about this matter? Feelings tend to shade our thinking, modifying the conclusions we make, and often vexing natural errors in our thinking. So our last step is step 6, and this is when we need to identify an example in which this conclusion is not true. And then when we do that, try to identify a few more examples in which this conclusion is not true. By going through these sequence of questions, we begin to consider alternate ways of thinking about issues, helping us to relax our attachment to these cognitive distortions, such as overgeneralization. And this also helps us to develop healthier thinking habits. So remind yourself that one instance does not make a pattern. Frequently in life, experiences happen separate of other experiences. And what we perceive as a failure is actually an opportunity to grow. So that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and check in next week when I'll be discussing the last 2 cognitive distortions in our series called mental filtering and disqualifying the positive. Have a wonderful day, stay mindful, and I'll see you next time.